U.S. Secretary of State arrives in Beijing, China warns of red lines. Video of a Russian turtle shell tank depicting a sudden clash under Ukrainian fire. Ukraine's Minister of Agriculture was accused of appropriating public land. The U.S. began building a pier in the Gaza Sea to speed up the flow of humanitarian aid. U.S. Secretary of State arrives in Beijing, China warns, don't step over the red line. Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi warned his U.S. counterpart Antony Blinken that the country should not cross China's red line, when the two countries' top diplomats met in Beijing on April 26. Bilateral relations are gradually stabilizing, but there are still many challenges. On April 24, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken arrived in Beijing. This was Mr. Blinken's second visit to China in less than a year. As soon as he arrived in Beijing, Mr. Blinken held talks for several hours with Foreign Minister Wang Yi. Mr. Wang opened the meeting with a question that sounded like a warning: should China and the U.S. be on the right track towards stability or return to a negative spiral? The head of Chinese diplomacy further emphasized that the Sino-U.S. relationship is beginning to stabilize, but is still being tested by negative factors. Previously, Mr. Wang warned that both countries could cooperate or confront, and even slide into conflict. He set out China's so-called red line regarding the country's sovereignty, security, and development, and warned the U.S. not to cross this line. Negative elements in the U.S.-China relationship are still growing and forming, and the relationship is facing all kinds of disruptions, Wang said. The Chinese foreign minister further emphasized that China's legitimate right to development has been unjustly suppressed and our core interests are facing challenges. Mr. Wang did not specify these challenges, but there are a number of sensitive points between the two superpowers, including their views on the South China Sea, U.S. support for Taiwan's government and human rights issues. Avoid miscalculation. As for the U.S. Secretary of State, Mr. Blinken is said to be more cautious when speaking to Mr. Wang in front of the press. The U.S. diplomat said that Beijing and Washington have a shared responsibility to promote the relationship with positive diplomacy. I hope we make some progress on the issues our leaders agreed to at the summit in California, Secretary of State Blinken told his Chinese counterpart. Video of a Russian turtle shell tank depicting a sudden clash under Ukrainian fire. Russian tanks are equipped with quite bulky and rudimentary armor like turtle shell, but demonstrate quite flexible and effective combat capabilities against Ukrainian firepower. Sputnik on April 24 published a video recording Russian T-72 tanks fighting under Ukrainian bullets and firepower. A special feature in the video is that the tank is equipped with an armor layer that looks like a turtle shell covering almost the entire turret and body. According to Sputnik, Russia has successfully equipped the T-72 with this protection layer to prevent Ukrainian first-person view, FPV, UAVs on the front lines. Recently, a turtle shell tank effectively supported the attack of Russian forces near the town of Krasnogorovka, Donbas front. The vehicle supported the successful landing of Russian shock troops and their subsequent attack outside the town. In addition to the armor covering to prevent UAVs, Russia also installed electronic warfare equipment with 8 antennas on the tank, helping to remotely jam enemy drones. Russian military reporter Alexander Sladkov commented that turtle shell armor is increasingly appearing on the front lines, and it shows that Moscow is trying to adapt to the fierce UAV war on the front lines. Ukraine's Minister of Agriculture was accused of appropriating public land. Ukraine's anti-corruption agency arrested Agriculture Minister Solsky to investigate allegations of appropriation of public land worth more than $12 million. The High Anti-Corruption Court of Ukraine, HACC, on April 26 approved a request from the Special Anti-Corruption Prosecutor's Office, SAPO, to apply preventive measures against Agriculture Minister Mykola Solsky. He will be detained for 2 months with a bail of 75.7 million hryvnia, about $1.9 million. Mr. Solsky is a key suspect in 2 investigations of corruption and public land appropriation with a total value of about $12.5 million when he was chairman of the Agriculture Committee in the Ukrainian parliament. SAPO recommended that Solsky be detained because of concerns that he would defect, obstruct the investigation or manipulate witnesses. The detention notice was announced one day after Mr. Solsky submitted his resignation and pledged to cooperate with the investigation agency. However, because the Ukrainian parliament has not yet considered the resignation, Mr. Solsky is still technically Minister of Agriculture. The National Anti-Corruption Bureau, NABU, earlier this week accused Mr. Solsky of leading a ring that appropriated public land in Sumy province, northern Ukraine, during the period 2017 to 2021. Solsky denied the accusations, saying that the above land was transferred ownership in accordance with the law. Solsky was elected to the Ukrainian parliament in 2019 and appointed Minister of Agriculture in March 2022. On April 26, Ukrainian prosecutors also prosecuted a series of other suspects related to Solsky. Ukrainian Deputy Minister of Agriculture Markian Dmytrosevich, who is traveling to Europe, is also a suspect. The U.S. began building a dock in the Gaza Sea to speed up the flow of humanitarian aid. The Pentagon said the U.S. military has begun building a wharf on the Gaza coast to speed up the flow of humanitarian aid into the area. I can confirm that U.S. military ships, including the USNS Benavides, have begun building temporary piers and causeways on the coast, Pentagon spokesman Major General Patrick Ryder said in a statement. Press conference on April 25. The wharf will be operational from May. According to satellite images, the pier seems to have been hastily constructed in the past 2 weeks. The wharf is located southwest of Gaza City, which was once the most populous area of this territory, before Israel launched a response campaign against Hamas that displaced more than 1 million people. The wharf will initially handle 90 trucks a day, but that number could go up to 150 when it becomes fully operational. The United Nations this week said the number of trucks carrying aid into Gaza in April was 200 per day and peaked on April 22 with 316. The unnamed U.S. official said about 1,000 U.S. troops would support the bridge's operations, including coordinated units in Cyprus and Israel. A third party will drive a truck down to the wharf to receive aid. Aid must be inspected by Israel and Cyprus before being shipped to Gaza. According to an anonymous U.S. official, trucks carrying aid from the wharf will have to pass through Israeli checkpoints on the mainland in Gaza, because Tel Aviv wants to prevent them from reaching Hamas. Such checkpoints raise concerns that aid could be delayed even after reaching shore. The United Nations has long complained about obstacles in receiving and distributing aid across Gaza. The Israeli army said it will provide security and logistics support for this pier. Accordingly, the brigade consisting of thousands of Israeli soldiers, along with Israeli Navy ships and Air Force, will ensure security when the U.S. military builds the bridge.